Hello and welcome to India Business Hour. I'm Shireen Bhan. The headlines that we're tracking for you this evening. The Indian rupee weakens to hit a fresh record low against the dollar as it moves closer to the 85 mark. The Sensex and the Nifty ended a two-week low after a broad-based decline. 49 out of the 50 Nifty stocks end in the red today. Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman terms a slowdown in Q2 GDP growth as a temporary blip, says the government's capital expenditure effectively began only in August post the elections. Expects overall growth rate to pick up going forward. The GST Council is likely to consider lowering the tax on food delivery by online portals from 18% to 5%, but they will potentially lose input tax credit benefits, bringing them on par with restaurants. The Council will also consider tax exemption on small ticket card payments made via payment aggregators worth up to 2,000 rupees. The Board of Market Regulator SEBI will meet tomorrow to discuss tightening the listing regulations for small businesses. The board is also likely to discuss expanding the definition of insider trading. US President-elect Donald Trump announces SoftBank will invest $100 billion after meeting Masayoshi Son. Trump also meets TikTok CEO, says he has a warm spot for the company but remains non-committal on protecting the firm. TikTok needs to divest Chinese ownership by the 19th of January to avert a ban in the US. Ukraine claims to have killed a top Russian general by placing a bomb outside his residence in Moscow. The general was accused of ordering chemical weapon attacks in Ukraine and was sanctioned by Western nations. Justin Trudeau's Canadian government in disarray after Finance Minister's abrupt resignation. Trudeau faces calls from his own party members to resign after a third defeat in a by-election this year. Fresh trouble for SpiceJet. The Delhi High Court is shocked after a vendor accuses SpiceJet of profiteering by illegally removing parts and using them in other airlines. Court has already ordered SpiceJet CEO and COO to appear in person over a case filed by another lessor. Government introduces legislations to conduct simultaneous elections in the Lok Sabha amidst fierce pushback from the opposition. The Congress calls the BJP bill unconstitutional. The government refers the bill to a joint parliamentary committee for further deliberation. The representation of women in corporate boardrooms remains largely stagnant this year. According to a survey by Excellence Enablers, the average age of the boardroom is over 63. Out of 561 independent directors, only 19 are below the age of 50. Well, straight to the day's trading action. A broad-based decline has seen the Lal Street ending at a two-week low. In fact, the Sensex saw cuts of over 1,000 points today, while the Nifty ended below 24,000. Nifty Bank falling in line with the blue chips, and the mid-caps also closing about 350 points lower. So that's the market snapshot for you, down in the red today. But from stocks to the money market, the Indian rupee has weakened to hit a new low against the US dollar as it moves closer to the 85 mark. Now, this as a fall in India's forex reserves as well as a strengthening dollar weighed on the currency. Manisha joins us now to take us through where the rupee is headed and what is weighing on the minds of the money market. That's the dollar rupee for you, and that's the bond market action. Manisha.
Well, it has been a string of record lows coming in for the Indian rupee, and today was yet another day. The rupee saw a low of 84.93, settled also at a record low closing of 84.8950 to the dollar. The rupee is down now by nearly 2% for this year, and the latest trigger comes in over a record widening of Asia nations' trade deficit driven by higher gold imports and weak exports. India's merchandise exports in the month of November fell 4.9% year-on-year basis to $32 billion, while the imports surged by more than 27%. Well, the pressure on the rupee also comes in on the fall from forex reserves by $50 billion. That happened in current quarter itself. Also, substantial equity outflows, slowing economic growth, and the dollar strength have hurt the rupee. The dollar index has surged by 5.5% in 2024 till time. Well, today the RBI did seem to have intervened, but trade expects the currency to weaken beyond 85 in the days to come. The overall trade volumes in the currency market were lower than usual as the market participants refrained from placing large bets ahead of the US Fed meeting on Thursday. The traders have priced in a 97% probability of the Fed lowering its rates by 25 basis points, though much would really depend on what the outlook or the guidance the Fed gives for 2025. That would move the dollar as well as the rupee.
Manisha, many thanks. That is the latest as far as the rupee is concerned. But in the cryptocurrency market, Bitcoin continues its record-breaking rally, hitting new all-time highs of $107,000. This after President-elect Donald Trump reiterated his plans to create a U.S. Bitcoin strategic reserve. Bitcoin buyer MicroStrategy's entry into the tech-heavy Nasdaq 100 index also lifted investor sentiment. The cryptocurrency's market cap currently above $2.11 trillion. Back home, Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman has called the slowdown in Q2 GDP growth as a temporary blip. Speaking in the Lok Sabha on the supplementary demand for grants, the Finance Minister said the government's capital expenditure effectively began only in August on account of the elections and expects overall growth rate to pick up. GDP growth slowed to 5.4% in Q2, which is the slowest in the last 7 quarters. Now, the Lok Sabha has approved the government's request to spend an additional 44,000 crore rupees this fiscal. Here's the Finance Minister on the expectations on growth.
GDP growth rate was lower than 5.4% in 2 quarters, quarter 4 of 21-22 and quarter 3 of 22-23. So it's important to understand that this drop happened just 2 quarters in the last 12 quarters that we're talking about. So let us not sort of pick on that one and predict future. This has been a steady growth and a steady sustained growth. The implementation of new announcements of this government commenced after the Appropriation Act was passed by the Parliament in August 2024. Effectively, it is from August that we are starting to give emphasis to many of the things, inclusive of capital expenditure.
Well, that is the Finance Minister. Now to a CNBC-TV18 exclusive. The GST Council is likely to consider lowering the tax on food delivery by online aggregators from 18% to 5%. However, these portals will potentially lose the input tax credit benefits, bringing them on par with restaurants, so the relief is not likely to be significant. Sources have said that the council may consider tax exemption on small-ticket card payments made via payment aggregators worth up to 2,000 rupees. The GST ministerial group may also recommend tax exemptions on individual term life insurance policies and reinsurance. Along with this, the group may also recommend tax exemptions on individual health insurance for senior citizens. The council will meet on the 21st of December in Jaisalmer. So a heavy-duty agenda there on the GST Council's table. The Board of Market Regulators, SEBI, will meet tomorrow to discuss tightening the listing regulations for small businesses and a review of some insider trading regulations. Yash is here with more details. Yash, what is the SEBI board likely to take up tomorrow?
Well, that's correct, Shireen. So, of course, market regulator SEBI's board meets tomorrow, and there are 3 important points which would be on SEBI's table for discussion. The first one would be regulations around small and medium enterprise listing, SME listing. The second one, insider trading regulations. And the third one, with respect to specified digital platforms. The most important out of the 3 things on the table would be tightening the regulations when it comes to SME listings. There are various suggestions which have come in the form of consultation paper from SEBI that came in November 2024. Some of those important suggestions were increase in the minimum application size to 2 lakhs or 4 lakhs from the current 1 lakh, introduction of draw of lot methodology for the HNI or NII investor category, also breaking up of NII category into small and large NII. Also, what it included in terms of suggestions was OFS portion to be restricted to 20 to 25% of the total issue size, as well as requirement of minimum allottees to be raised to 200 from the current 50. There are various other points as far as tightening regulations around SME listing is concerned. That's been a point of concern for market regulators SEBI for quite some time. The second one would be expanding the definition of unpublished price-sensitive information under the insider trading regulations. SEBI could consider including many things like change in ratings, proposed fundraising, agreements that impact the management control and company fraud, change in KMP as far as the definition of UPSI or unpublished price-sensitive information is concerned. There could be certain regulations with respect to specified digital platforms also that could come up for SEBI's board meeting for consideration tomorrow.
All right, Yash, many thanks for joining us. Now, shares of Vedanta slipped in early trade after the company's board declared a 4th interim dividend for the current fiscal at 8.5 rupees per share. The dividend payout amounts to 3,324 crore rupees. This will take the total dividend in FY25 so far to 16,800 crore rupees. The record date for the payout has been set at the 24th of December. Manufacturing facility of pharma company Indoco Remedies in Goa has received a warning letter from the U.S. drug regulator. The Goa facilities Plant 2 and 3 had received an official action indicated status in October. Indoco has not specified the factors behind the issuance of the warning letter. However, the company said it continues to supply products from this facility. Now, the deal between Adani Green and the Andhra Pradesh government, which is facing bribery allegations in the U.S., has reportedly been approved against the advice of the state officials. This as per a Reuters report. The Andhra Pradesh cabinet under former Chief Minister Jagan Mohan Reddy overruled the advice from officials and approved the deal. Officials in the Finance and Energy Department had flagged additional costs and said the deal was not good value, according to documents seen by Reuters. The US State Department has accused Adani of paying a substantial bribe to a senior official in the Andhra Pradesh government to secure the power supply agreement. Adani has denied all charges. Now, fresh trouble for SpiceJet. The Delhi High Court has expressed, and I quote, shock while hearing a contempt case filed by lessor TWC Aviation. The lessor alleges that SpiceJet has illegally profiteered by removing aircraft parts and used it on other planes. The court has already ordered SpiceJet's CEO and COO to appear in person over a case filed by another lessor. Remember, both those positions lie vacant today. Ashmit joins us now with details. Another tough day for SpiceJet in the Delhi High Court today, Ashmit.
Well, fresh trouble brewing for the airline SpiceJet. Just yesterday, we had a dispute with Team France, but the Delhi High Court had issued summons to the CEO of the airline. Today, we have yet another day, yet another dispute with yet another lessor by the name of TWC Aviation. The Delhi High Court expressing shock at the conduct of SpiceJet, expressing shock at how SpiceJet has been stripping parts of planes which in fact are owned by the lessors, and that going on to say that there is no provision in the lease agreement that provides for stripping of these parts, and importantly saying that it will not stand idly by, warning of further action against the airline. Now, here are the facts of the case. TWC Aviation had leased out 3 engines and 2 aircraft to the airline. There was a payment dispute. The Delhi High Court intervened. The engines as well as planes were sent back. However, the lessors raised the concern that it seems parts have been stripped off the planes in question. So 16 parts in plane number 1, 29 parts in plane number 2. This, the lessors say, is a cannibalization by SpiceJet. They've stripped parts using it for other aircraft, and this is illegal profiteering. SpiceJet, interestingly, is not denying the fact that it has stripped those parts. In fact, SpiceJet's argument has been is that if at all there's any relief for the lessors, they need to initiate fresh proceedings seeking damages, and that this is not the correct forum for actually seeking relief. And now this inspired a great deal of shock and amazement at the hands of the Delhi High Court. Delhi High Court saying that it cannot stand by such arguments, it cannot stand by such conduct. In fact, it went on to say that there is no merit prima facie in these submissions that have been forwarded as far as the airline is concerned, and that it needs to give just one last final opportunity to the airline to come good and to explain on its conduct. That next hearing will be on January 14th.
Ashmit, many thanks. Now, Taiwanese laptop maker MSI has begun manufacturing operations in its first plant in Chennai. The company plans to locally produce versions of 2 laptop models. MSI has also partnered with retail brands, including Chroma and Reliance Retail, to expand its footprint. Telecom Minister Jyotiraditya Scindia has said that satellite spectrum cannot be auctioned due to technical and operational reasons. In a post on social media platform X, the minister maintained that the spectrum cannot be assigned to a single person or entity. His statement comes after Congress leader Jairam Ramesh accused the government of favouring administrative allocation of spectrum. In international news, US President-elect Donald Trump has announced that SoftBank will invest $100 billion in America over the next 4 years. SoftBank's chairman Masayoshi Son was at Trump's residence in Florida and promised to create 1 lakh jobs in the US. Son had made a similar announcement in 2016 after Trump won his first presidential election. Take a look.
Excited to go, and we were discussing, and President Trump said, Masa, double down is not enough. Maybe, go for more, right?
That's what I'm going to ask him right now. Would you make it $200 billion instead of he can actually, believe it or not, he can actually afford to do that. Would you do that?
Well, my promise is 100, but he's now asking to do more. I think with your leadership, my partnership with you, with your support, I will try to make it happen.
That's good.
All right.
200. He'll make it happen. 200 billion investment.
He is a great negotiator.
Well, from From one CEO to another, meeting U.S. President-elect Donald Trump. He also met with TikTok CEO and said he has a warm spot for the company. However, he has remained non-committal on protecting the firm. Remember, TikTok needs to divest its Chinese ownership by the 19th of January next year to avert a ban in the U.S. after a court ruling. Here's Donald Trump.
We'll take a look at TikTok. You know, I have a warm spot in my heart for TikTok because I won youth by 34 points. And there are those that say that TikTok had something to do with that. Now, Joe Rogan did, and some of the other people that were recommended by my son Barron, he knew names.
Well, relief in the offing for TikTok, one will have to wait to see. But here's the latest from West Asia. At least 14 people have been killed in Israeli attacks across Gaza over the last 24 hours. This comes as Qatar, Egypt and the US have renewed efforts to broker a ceasefire in recent days. The overall death toll in Gaza has now crossed 45,000, according to health officials. Meanwhile, the Israeli Air Forces continue to carry out dozens of attacks targeting military and ammunition sites across Syria. Syria's interim government has called on the UN Security Council to act immediately to stop Israel's attacks. The new Syrian government has also demanded that Israel withdraw from areas it has occupied since the fall of the Assad regime last week. This comes after Israel approved an $11 million plan to double its population in the annexed Golan Heights.
We all have been shattered, and I think we are lost for words about what happened here. I have now talked to some of the prisoners, some of the detainees, some of the families, some of the grandchildren of those who were killed here. We have seen some who survived. I think it's been unspeakable, the horrors that they went through.
These are principles of territorial integrity, sovereignty, accountability, but also inclusiveness of government, taking into account especially the minorities and women's rights in this case. This process has to be Syria-led and Syria-owned and reflect the Syrian people in all of its diversity. This is very, very important. Extremism, Russia and Iran also should not have a place in Syria's future.
Well, from West Asia to Europe, Ukraine has claimed to have killed a top Russian general in Moscow. The general and his assistant were killed by an explosion that was caused by a device hidden inside an electric scooter. Ukrainian officials have said the bomb was detonated remotely. The general was accused of ordering chemical weapons attacks in Ukraine and was sanctioned by Western nations. In a statement, Russia has said they've launched an official investigation into the case. Back home, the government has introduced the legislations to conduct simultaneous elections in the Lok Sabha amidst a fierce pushback from the opposition. The bills were introduced after a 90-minute debate, followed by a division of votes. As many as 269 members voted in favour of the bill, 198 against it. Close to 20 BJPs were missing during today's vote in Parliament. The BJP is likely to seek a reply from these MPs. The government needs two-thirds majority to pass these bills, which it currently does not have. The bills have been referred to a joint parliamentary committee for further deliberations.
There are certain features of the Indian Constitution which are beyond the amending power of this House also. One of the essential features is federalism and the structure of our democracy. And therefore, the bills which have been moved by the Honourable Minister of Law and Justice absolutely assault the basic structure of the Constitution and are beyond the legislative competence of this House, and therefore they need to be opposed ab initio, and the introduction of those bills have to be stopped.
माननीय सदस्य बालू साहब ने कहा कि इसको जेपीसी को दे देना चाहिए। जब ये संविधान सुधार का विधेयक, संवैधानिक संशोधन जब कैबिनेट में चर्चा में आया, तब प्रधानमंत्री जी ने स्वयं मंशा व्यक्त करी थी कि इसको जेपीसी को देना चाहिए। इस पर विस्तृत चर्चा सभी स्तर पर होनी चाहिए।
It is always better to get a consensus with the parties, because there's no point in having unnecessarily aggressive attitude in this regard. So it's better to arrive at a consensus, but it is not a big issue in my opinion, particularly because that our voters have had rich experience and they have been voting differently.
And you can catch our conversation with the former Chief Election Commissioner T.S. Krishnamurthy at 9:30 p.m. right here on CNBC-TV18. Up next on India Business Hour, the representation of women in corporate boardrooms remains largely stagnant this year, according to a survey by Excellence Enablers. That and more coming up. You can catch all of CNBC-TV18's news and updates on Facebook, X, Threads, Instagram and JioCinema. China has planned to raise the budget deficit to 4% of its GDP in 2025 versus the initial target of 3%. As per Reuters report, this hike is the highest on record as the country plans to maintain an economic growth target of around 5%. Chinese officials have reportedly said that this move is in line with a more proactive fiscal policy. Now, India's National Security Advisor Ajit Doval will meet his Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi tomorrow. The top-level meeting will see the two nations discuss the long-standing border dispute following disengagement of forces on the line of actual control. The Ministry of External Affairs said the two sides will discuss the management of peace and tranquility in the border areas and explore a fair, reasonable and mutually acceptable proposal. A 15-year-old female student opened fire at a school in Wisconsin, killing a fellow student and a teacher. The attack also wounded 6 other people. Police officials found the suspect dead at the scene and said she died from a self-inflicted gunshot wound. Officials have also said that 2 students remain in critical condition with life-threatening injuries. 2 people are in stable condition and the others have been discharged from hospital. Justin Trudeau's Canadian government in disarray after Finance Minister's abrupt resignation. Trudeau faces calls from his own party members to resign after a third defeat in a by-election this year. In a major turn of events, German Chancellor Olaf Scholz lost a confidence vote in Parliament, forcing the country into snap elections. The vote came after Scholz's fragile coalition collapsed, sparking a political crisis in the largest economy of the EU. Only 207 lawmakers voted in Scholz's support in the 733-member lower house, or Bundestag. That left him far short of the majority of 367 needed to stay in power. Following this, the snap elections for a new parliament will take place on the 23rd of February. The representation of women in corporate boardrooms has remained largely stagnant this year, according to a survey by Excellence Enablers. Now, the average age of the boardroom is over 63, and out of 561 independent directors, only 19 are below the age of 50. Rachna joins us now with the details of what India's boardrooms look like. Rachna.
53, that's the total number of female directors in all of Nifty 100 companies in the year FY24. This is concerning, more so because in FY21, this number was at 57. This and other trends of declining women representation have been highlighted in 5th Corporate Governance Survey by Excellence Enablers. The survey shows that women still represent only 20% of the total board members, a percentage that has stagnated for the last 3 years. 5% of the companies still don't have any women independent directors on their boards. This includes 4 PSU companies and 1 public sector bank. The total number of women independent directors is at 147 for FY24, just slightly better than 101, which was in FY21. The survey also notes that while presence of a woman independent director on boards has been mandated, there is no similar provision for women executives graduating them to board positions. As per the survey, in 2021 and 2022, only 2 companies had women managing directors, and the number has now gone up to 5. Similar is the case with companies where women chairpersons are in position. The average representation of women in India Inc. has not changed in the last 2 years and stands at about 36.6%. Apart from gender diversity, the survey also highlights declining shareholder engagement at annual general meetings. Shareholder participation has dropped dramatically, with attendance falling to just 0.18% in FY24. Virtual AGMs, which became common during the pandemic, have reduced opportunities for direct interaction. The survey hence strongly recommends a hybrid AGM model to bridge this gap and enhance engagement. It also notes that the shortest AGM this year lasted only 19 minutes. On the corporate social responsibility front, the survey notes that companies are meeting spending mandates but falling short on impact assessments. While CSR funds are being deployed, meaningful employee volunteering and long-term outcome measurements remain limited. The survey notes that in FY24, 1 company did not transfer the unspent amount to the CSR fund at all. And did not give a reason for this at all. Over 22 such companies in 2024 did not transfer any money to their CSR accounts, and so companies are being urged to focus not just on compliance, but on delivering tangible benefits to the society.
Unless you introduce things like fast tracking in regard to promotion of competent women who are serving the company, bringing in people from outside the company, who might fit the bill. All of those have to be done, plus certain other things which will address the issue of why there are less women in the company in executive positions. Some of them, for various reasons, have to take a break. Some of them come back, some don't come back, they stay away. So the supply is not adequate.
And you can catch our entire conversation with the former SEBI chief, M. Damodran, at 9:45 p.m. right here on CNBC TV18. And with that, it is time for us to wrap up this edition of India Business Hour. Thanks very much for watching. Do stay tuned. The news continues right here on CNBC TV18. We're back in a moment with plenty more.